tonight's session of this exciting podcast that is lying ahead. You know what? Something interesting, everyone. Our Facebook pages was booming and buzzing. Our telephones was ringing this past couple of weeks. They are so interested meeting our guest here tonight. And I can't wait to introduce them to you. But before we give you that opportunity to meet our guest here tonight, just a small introduction, guys. We know that we've been recording some videos in the past and having some interesting conversation. I think interesting conversation is key to driving disability awareness, especially through this platform and also other media houses that we are driving this conversation through. And having here tonight in driving and taking this conversation to a next level is Dane, Candice, and Kirsten joining us here today, talking about REIID and explaining to you how it all integrates with the objectives of Oppie Bol. Guys, without any further ado, I can already hear the phones are ringing here to say, hey, put them on. So without any further ado, over to you, guys.
Sure.
Candice.
Thanks, and thanks so much for having us here today. We are just as excited as you are to talk about this work that we are doing. So just as an introduction, I'm Candice Groenewald. I'm a Chief Research Specialist at the Human Sciences Research Council. And my broad area of interest that really aligns with what we are doing is I would love to know what it is that we need to do to make sure that young people live good lives, where they have access to resources, access to all the different things that they need to be able to say, I am doing well. So, and that's in a nutshell what I do. And so I will pass the buck over to Kirsten.
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, Caz and Oppie Bol, for having us. So, as Caz said, I'm Kirsten Deane, and I'm a science writing intern and poetic inquiry co-facilitator at the HSRC. My interest in disabilities is really a personal thing where growing up with disabilities myself, I always kind of moved away from it and tried my best to not think about it, not pay any attention to it. But as my life went on, as I fell in love with creative writing and I was encouraged by my supervisor to write about it, that was kind of where my journey started in terms of falling in love with the work and really creating awareness and understanding other people's lived experiences, because it's amazing how interesting our lives actually are when we have various disabilities. And what I really want to do is show that there's positive, creative, beautiful ways that we experience the world. Over to you, Dane.
Thank you so much, Kirsten, and good evening from a very grey and cold autumny Cape Town. I am Dane Isaacs. I'm a senior research specialist at the Human Sciences Research Council. Interestingly enough, I think that my interest in disability, disability studies, actually gave my experience something that I didn't have a name for. When I started reading disability studies, that's when I could name my pain with terms like oppression, discrimination, disablement, ableism. And I think that's why I've spent the past 7 years just actively building work around advocacy for persons with invisible disabilities. Yeah. Thank you for having me, Caz.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dane, Kirsten, and Candice. Yeah, well, guys. You know, Kirsten and I have been working so much closely behind the scenes and putting everything together and making sure all the clever people are here tonight. You know, in guiding us through most of our questions. I'm very sure that tonight we're going to also unpack some of the questions that is also lying in our heads. This is what this is all about, to also answer those questions that we've been wondering. So without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, our guests, viewers all over the world, we're going to dive straight into it. And guys, can you maybe also tell us how did it came about with REIID, and tell us more about REIID so the viewers can be at ease now, at least breaking the ice. Tell us about REIID, guys.
Sure, I think the best person to kick us off would be Kirsten. She has been the link between all of us, pulling us together around REIID. So I think she would be a great person to kick us off, and then we'll all just add to this.
Thank you,
Absolutely.
Candice. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, we had such an interesting journey to actually get into the name itself. I mean, we started with readjusting invisible disabilities, and then we had a conversation that was led by Dane, where he actually made us aware that, using the term readjusting doesn't align with our intentions, because the whole mindset behind REIID is to really claim back that word of disabled and disability, and focusing specifically on invisible disabilities. For myself, I have been made very aware over the past couple of years, since I became accepting of my own disabilities, that there's such a small box that people actually see disabilities as. So it's a thing of, if they can see that, oh, but you're walking on your own, clearly you can, you're mobile, you're not in a wheelchair, they automatically assume, well, you don't have a disability. And I started thinking a lot about how so many other people, not only in South Africa, but around the world, that have invisible disabilities that aren't as apparent to the human eye as others, how they are experiencing the world, and how they are struggling. Because it's not only a situation where, okay, I have these physical struggles, but how do I ask for help when people are making me feel invalid, as if my disability doesn't matter? So that was really where the idea for the project came from, and really just trying to create a space where people with invisible disabilities can be heard and share their stories, and conducting research that focuses on that, because as we know, research is done on disabilities that are very visual and then people can see when they look at you, but not a lot is done for individuals with invisible disabilities. So that was where it came about for me.
There is so much interesting, sharing. I like that hidden disabilities, and that sometimes there is also one of the things that the public may wonder about when they see a person with a disability, and have lots of questions in their mind. Recently, we had a mental health month, and that by itself unpacks so many questions that people didn't know. So Candice, over to you.
Yeah, sure. I think for me, the importance of this work is obviously, I mean, the naming is very intentional, as Kirsten has indicated, and we'll unpack that a little bit just now. But I think that the component of invisibility, it is something that can be very oppressive, exclusionary, painful, and it's something that we have to challenge. And that for me has been the key thing that has interested me in doing this work. It also relates to my own experiences around pain, which I often feel is I describe that as invisible pain in relation to my struggles that I've had. And so that invisibility, that neglect that we've experienced in the world, but also that we sometimes experience towards ourselves, because we can't place it, because we can't name it. It's important for us to start having this conversation. The world is changing and shifting. It's an important space for us to get on that space and go, how do we reclaim different things in a way that moves lives forward, and that creates conversation. And that's why we're so excited about this platform, because it gets us talking about things, and it gets us, we wear many hats. So we have experiences, but we also researchers, and we think in a particular way. And so we also want to know, how do we do our work in a way that is applied and that is meaningful, that is not just that's not just contributing to a conversation in a broader sense, but it's really meaningful for people's lives. And so, yeah, that's how we started chatting about this, and we decided we needed to create a project that emphasizes the importance of this conversation. We still don't know what that means. It's an ongoing, growing platform. And through this kind of collaborations, we're hoping to build it as we go along, because it is shifting all the time. So, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. You know, one of the things that stand out for me whilst meeting Dane was his passion
Yes.
about his work. You know, and I'm sure without any further ado, everyone, I'm so excited to hear why this is so closely to his heart. Dane, over to you.
Thank you so much, Caz. It's quite interesting that yeah, for me, the journey, actually, the way that I got introduced to disability studies was actually at the HSRC. And I think that Candice and myself, before the forming of this project, she's always taken a keen interest in my work. Right, and I think for me, like I said, I've always, right, and so when I spoke to Kirsten about that concept, so the first meeting we had about, I think we called it readjusting, right? And I always found myself as a person who stutters constantly having to find ways to readjust me to fit my environment. And I think that at that point, I didn't know that there's a name for this, because keep in mind, when we think about invisible impairments or, stuff like that, there's always a lot of myths around it. And I think when it comes to an impairment like stuttering, goodness gracious, there's lots of myths. You mimic a child and you catch stuttering. There is that you demon possessed. That it's many other stuff. And so obviously that did I internalized this self-blame. And so I had to constantly find ways through speech therapy, find ways through breathing techniques, always just to readjust my impairment. And I think when Charlene Swartz actually, I need to name her that when so I started out as a master's intern, and then she referred me to a guy that was my PhD supervisor that kind of opened the door for me, Professor Leslie Swartz. And then through meeting him, he kind of, a paradigm shift happened for me when I realized that I'm no more to blame for my stutter. I'm no more, it's not constantly my problem, like I shared, Candice and Kirsten and many others, and you guys also know my story. And I actually, interestingly, my first paper for my PhD, it was, I don't have time for this, right? Starting on the politics of university time, where I was made to feel, because I couldn't readjust my impairment to the master's program, I was told I must leave, I must go. And for a long time, I believed that I blamed me for not being able to be fluent. I blamed me for not being able, not asking the question, why can't you reshape, right? Why can't you diversify your program, right, to accommodate me? And I think that is my passion also around this work, to kind of stop, right, the many, like Candice said, I think for me, when I journeyed through my schooling experiences, my university experiences, it was difficult. I think particularly my schooling experiences, right? And if I am the first person to kind of say, it's going to stop with me, I would want the career goals. People that were totally, marginalized from society because they were told, that this is not a space for you. And so I'm so happy, that we can have this platform in the HSRC to kind of just drive through this agenda. Thanks, Caz.
Yeah, thank you. That is amazing. I think this is one of the biggest reasons why Oppie Bol is interested, in this work that we are doing, interested in having conversations, interested in sharing the message, interested in educating society. I think that is one of the big things. It's our responsibility as specifically persons with disabilities to educate society about our specific needs, to educate society about our specific disabilities, to also remove that, that will enable to remove that societal barriers, to also give us equal access and make us equal participants in our society, and not only in society but as a whole, but also giving us economic access to job opportunities, access to businesses. And I think this is one of the big reasons why we're having this conversation, to unlock, you know, the stereotypes that is there, and to remove that stereotypes, and to educate the guys out there and our society and our listeners here to say this is what it is all about. So having said that, let's go straight into unpacking, reclaiming. And I think that is the big word. So when we are talking about reclaiming, what needs to be reclaimed? I think that is one of the big questions here today. And so let's unpack that. Kirsten, let me start with you. What needs to be reclaimed?
Thank you, Caz. Well, I think there's so many things. There's so many things that need to be reclaimed in terms of how we feel about our invisible disabilities. And I think for me, that's one of the most important parts of this project, is helping people and kind of giving them that push to realize they don't have to feel or view their disabilities in a negative way, right? So the reclaiming really talks to how we want people, our listeners, our readers, everybody that interacts with us as a team and with the project, to see that having a disability that is invisible or hidden isn't a negative thing, and it's not something that we need to hide or something that we need to feel unsure of or ashamed of. And I think for me, a big part of it is also the idea that a lot of the times people with disabilities that aren't as visible, they kind of don't know, well, do I say that I have a disability or do I not? Because people haven't really made me feel as if I should say it. And then if I do say it, it's almost like this negative thing. And then you start to feel that having a disability, it's not supposed to be that way. I wasn't supposed to be made this way. So I think that for me, the whole intention behind that word of reclaiming is to just take back the word and give it your own feeling, your own meaning, and don't let having this word of having a disability, don't let it allow you to feel negatively about yourself or your disability. So it's really just about taking back your mind, your body, everything about your life, really.
Yes, absolutely. I think when our constitution is talking about redress the injustices of the past, we are so much part of that, to reclaim, to redress, the injustices to us as persons with disabilities as well.
Yeah.
Candice, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think for me, it's also a space where we are challenging people who do not have invisible disabilities or disabilities to reclaim an ownership of what we call Ubuntu. Right? We have this very thing that we like, we Ubuntu, and we are collectivist societies, and we care. But Dane always speaks about that. It sometimes feels that within this area of work, it's often people who have experience or know someone, or that is closely affected by this area of work, that want to do the work or be involved or anything like that. So there's a space for us to reclaim an involvement, a partnership, a support in this area of work where it's not us and them. I mean, that narrative is very old school and should be kicked out. In any case, it's about we are all connected to each other. And from particularly a societal and a mental health perspective, so that my background is in psychology, right? And so if we want to ensure that people are well and people are good and people feel good and adjusted and supported and loved and cared for, it's up to all of us It
Absolutely.
shouldn't be that certain people must advocate for whatever's happening in their lives and we must listen. No, it's we
Yes.
must all come together to reclaim something. Reclaim the way we think about disabilities when we don't have
Yeah.
those disabilities. Reclaim the way we speak about it. Reclaim the way we respond to people. The way that we other and the way that we criticize. We have to address that. And so that's another
Yes.
key important thing for me about this is that this is about invisible disabilities, but it's also about thinking about how do we as people who potentially do not have those invisible disabilities respond to people and become a
Yes.
space of safety for everybody. Yeah.
Ye- Yes, you know what, you said something very, very, very much profound. We once had a disability awareness day at a school here in Gauteng. And the principal of that school said, it's time that we move out because we can't continuously preach to the converted, to ourselves. If you raise disability awareness, your objective must be to mainstream, to have an inclusive model, and not only to preach that on an island, like you say. So you are right when you say, and I fully agree with that, when we are talking about readdressing the principle of Ubuntu, indeed does apply in the approach that we're having. Dane, very eager to listen to your input there.
Yes, so I think, the reclaiming, I think two P's for me. It's personhood and place. I think, so last week we did sort of a focus group for this project that we're running at the HSRC. And then I led this focus group. And this lady, so she's disabled. And, I asked her a question and she said, we are also human. And people don't think we are human. And something like that, that conference that I met Caz at, it's the interesting thing was that day, is that what Caz said, is that room was filled with the converted. Right, that conference, people that must hear it, those that are implicit and part and parcel of the discrimination, that they want to be around this table. Right? And for me, that reclaiming is, as that woman said, I'm also human. Like it's that personhood. It's also this need for respect, because I always find that when you enter spaces, that you always somehow need to feel lucky that you are here. It's like it's part of our ticking box exercise, and I really feel that needs to be restored, and reclaim back that personhood, because like I always share with Candice, and Caz, you touched on it. I think it was Caz, when we speak, on this whole concept about when I think of gender, right, and the various gender identities. There's, gender sensitivity training, where we are aware of people's different gender identities, right? So we move away from a simple binary, right? And I see that that more and more people, they are kind of reclaiming their identities to these different categories, and they are getting that respect. They are getting that, look, this is me. This is how I identify as, right? That personhood is immediately restored, right? And I think that if that is the first thing that reclaiming should do, is kind of saying, that I am a person and I deserve to be respected. It's not some quota thing that I got you, because I tend to think that many people who do not have a disability or has an impairment, somehow they think that they're doing you a charity action. I kind of making room for you, which I think many persons they've earned their way, or all have earned their way. You know, and so yeah, Caz, thank you.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. Candice, you want to have a bite there? I see you. I see you want to add something there.
No, I just support it. I'm just so excited that we are talking about this. I think there's so many things we will still talk about in upcoming sessions, but I think this is just such a important conversation, and my hope is that everyone that's listening is going to really take a good reflection on themselves and go, how can I, how can I, as someone that might have a disability or an invisible disability, how can I ensure that my voice is heard and my space is taken? As Dane said, we've all earned to be where we are. But then also for people who don't have a disability in any shape or form, how can you become to share the gender identity lens and ally, in support of people, in support of reclaiming a space, in support of readjusting the oppression that you spoke about, Caz, earlier. And so, yeah, I'm just excited that we get to talk about this in a platform that hopefully will reach a diverse audience, and not preach to the departed as to the converted, as you said.
Yes,
Dane?
that's very true. Dane, you said something.
So it's that also touches on this article that Kirsten and myself and Candice wrote in October. Right, and we always speak about this, where even a common thing, where organizations ask you, right, when you put on your form, are you disabled? And then they want a medical certificate.
Yeah.
So what does that mean for someone with an invisible? Why must it be justified by a medical certificate? Also the common signage, right? And I think that goes back to Kirsten's point about when you see the common signage for disabled people, that's a wheelchair, that blue sticker thingy. And so it's like, so the common discourse, even in the corporate space, is proof, right? It's medical proof, right? And I think that part of that reclaiming, it's also kind of saying that, right, it's beyond the physical aspect, it's beyond the medical aspect. There are different impairments that people deal with every single day, that are not spoken about, right? And it's so easy to say, go to a doctor and prove it, but you'll get, and I think of stuttering, for example. I know a few speech and language pathologists. When you ask them, right, when the clients come to them and say, please, can you write a letter for me? They say they're not comfortable. Doing that for their, so then that, once again, there's a gap in that system. So once again, it's like the medical model of disability. We're going back there where you needed some medical professional to affirm upon you that you are. Right, but we also know that it is an embodied experience. You are the best person to understand your experience, and I think we need to move past that very medicalized way of thinking about issues of impairment and disability.
Oh, you are.
Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry. You've touched upon a few key things there, Dane. And I want us, and I please want you to also explain to our audience and to our listeners, just dive more into the complexities about the invisible disability that I think you touched on a few key things there. So I think it's important that we just highlight that and explain that in more detail, the complexities about the invisible disabilities to our audience.
Of course, when we think about right, invisible disabilities, right, and I think even there in itself, there's politics. I mean, Candice and myself always have this Kirsten who knows, and there's even
Yes.
politics there around, is it an invisible impairment or is it an
Yeah.
invisible disability?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, when we go to theory, so when we think about disability, it's argued that it's my social experience. So I am disabled, I'm oppressed, I am marginalized by my environment, and so,
Yes.
but another mistake that sometimes people make is that, like with physical, like those pictures, it's like, so the wheelchair, okay, so that makes that person disabled. They, like they can't move, they mobile, but we don't forget that it's that person's interaction with their social environment. Like I think today, for example, I was in a staff meeting, and it's interesting because there are some days when it comes to my stutter, when people tell me, "Oh, do you really stutter?" I don't hear anything. But today, I had to speak, and through my interaction, I felt totally disabled because I struggle to talk. Right? And so at that particular moment, my experience was, that I am feeling that I need to push beyond what is my limit. But it's my experience. And it's not necessarily that my colleagues were aware of it and that they saw it. And I think that is the key of it. It's that sometimes I think, but it comes with this thing, this old saying we used to do, seeing is believing. And I think people want to first see it before they believe it. And so for me, I mean, my colleagues were gracious, they're amazing. But even if I don't tell them, they're not going to know. They're just going to be, okay, he stutters, he's struggling. But at that moment in that time, that was my experience. And that's what we argue, that it's the social experience. It's sometimes there are days when you just like Candice would speak about her experience of pain. Like there are days, when you are feeling good, but there are days, right, when your pain is sometimes it's just not. And so for me, it's also being cognizant that we're beyond like the medical aspect, and we're acknowledging the social experience of someone.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with you there. Especially staying on impairments. There are various forms of impairments. We've got our visual impairment, we've got hearing impairment, and much more. I just want you to also, Kirsten, just talk us through the importance of those impairments being addressed also on this platform, and include that be in this discussion on the invisible disability.
Thank you, Kazia. I think for me, thinking about all the different aspects like Dane was talking about in a social setting, how it can really influence how you feel and how where you are yourself of your disability. And I think for me, from my experience, I always say that you get two types of people when it comes to interacting with somebody with a disability. It's either they see it immediately or they are made aware of it immediately, or it's somebody who they don't see it at first, but like if they see you like maybe 2 or 3 times, then they'll be like, oh, like what happened? I used to do this thing. Sometimes I still do it, I won't lie. Like if I know I'm meeting somebody and I'm never gonna see them again, and they ask me, oh, what happened to your hand? Or like, what happened to your leg? I'll be like, no, I fell yesterday, it's just I'm fine. And the reason why I do that is because I mean the effort, Kaz, to go and have to explain, like, okay, no, what I have is left hemiplegia, it's this and this and this. And because people are only educated on such a limited amount of disabilities, they're gonna be like, huh, what is that? And then it makes you feel even more like invalid, and you're like, oh, now I feel embarrassed because now I'm talking about this thing and this person's looking at me like I'm crazy. So
Yeah.
I think for me, the reclaiming is really about educating people so that we don't have to feel uncomfortable and awkward when
Yeah.
people actually bring it up and ask questions. I mean, it's the worst feeling. It's so
Yes.
uncomfortable. And I think it's
Yes.
just not wanting people to experience that feeling. Like, obviously, we live in the world, right? It will happen. But if we can
Yeah.
kind of change that or minimize it just a little bit and decrease it, like that would change people's lives, because what it really does is when you feel ashamed to explain something, or you feel this anxiety while you are explaining it, it only makes you develop even more negative feelings towards yourself. So it's this vicious
Absolutely.
cycle of, how do I
Yes.
explain this? Okay, I go and I
Yeah.
explain it. This person still doesn't understand, and I'm left feeling worse. So it's really just about educating so that we can feel, and other people with invisible
Absolutely.
disabilities can feel a lot more comfortable. Dane?
Absolutely.
Okay. Oh,
Yes,
sorry,
Dane?
just to
Yeah.
jump in there. Sorry, man. There's something very interesting that Kirsten said that I can really relate to, and it's this constant thing is that we always want to apologize for being us.
Yeah.
And we're always mindful of how we make others feel, right? And we never ever think of how others make us feel.
True.
And, like she said, this thing of, so you kind of tired to explain it, but yet someone else can take hours to explain something else that is important to them. And it's quite interesting, because I, just like Kirsten, I always find this thing where like with me, like it's proven in terms of stuttering, if you don't sleep really well, then you do stutter a bit more. And so just like Kirsten said, now you may be in a meeting and goodness gracious, you didn't sleep well. Now your stutter is at the all high. Now you need to articulate yourself, but you can't. Like Kirsten said, for me, my first mind is, oh my God, I don't want to now inconveniences people with my story.
Yeah.
And you're struggling, and I've oftentimes found that the moment you make people aware of it, they actually are quite interested. And I think it's this things, so I've got it on actually on so my Facebook's background picture, and that's my theme. Stop betraying yourself to please others. And I think like that, if we become so focused on us and our experiences, I think that it would also start there, changing people, because I've seen many people, they do want to know, but I think we're also very scared because we're so aware not to inconvenience, because we've always been made to feel like a burden. We've always been made to feel, hey, there's something wrong with you. You always need extra time. You always, that's why I'm so opposed, not opposed, when teachers, when I ask them, so how do you accommodate the learner who stutters? And then they always say, I give him extra time. How humiliating is that for a child? We all do that stuff, but how you grow up with this thing, oh my God. Like I remember, and I was grade 11 and I did this presentation. So my English teacher meant it well, but I struggled. Right? And one of the guys in the class came to me and he said, couldn't you have done it some other time? You wasted our time. And so she meant it well, but now you grow up with those reactions, you constantly need to speak quicker, speak faster, speak quicker, do. So you realize you can't inconvenience other people, so you always kind of discount your experience to make others feel good, but at the cost of your own personhood and your own place in society. Yes, thanks, Caz.
Yeah, no, thanks. Thanks. That is so interesting. It makes me think of the other day. I was running, not very fast because I tried for
I'm sure you were running
purposes.
very fast.
Yeah. having only just one arm, I was running past running in our neighborhood, and so this little guy and his mom was also walking, and he was saying, because I wasn't running very fast, like I said, so I could hear what he said. So he said to his mom, "Mom, look at this uncle. He's got only one hand." And so the mom was like pulling him back. "No, you don't say that." So I think, it boils back, like we said in the beginning, to us, our responsibility and what is okay to say, how to say it, the disability etiquette, what is acceptable in our society, that boils back to that, and that brings me to talking about disability, the word disability. What does that mean? What does that refer to? Candice, take us through that.
Sure. I don't even know if I'm the best person to talk about this. I'm a very, very newbie in the area of disability. But I think what I've learned, I'll start off and I'll pass it on. But I think what I've learned in conversation with Kirsten and with Dane is that, and Dane started off by saying this, is that there is so much complexity that is available and that should be available when we talk about disability. And I think the reason for this platform is about bringing that to the fore, and just if we step back with impairments, is also, that wasn't initially part of our name, right? And we had to have, and the thing that I really appreciate about the group is we are very critical and engaging and, meaningful about the conversations we had. We had to reflect and go, is disability inclusive enough to represent the inclusivity we're trying to represent? And Dane came and said, well, no, disability and impairment is two different things. And so I think in having that conversation with both of them, it's what I'm learning, is that it is a complex concept. But before I hand over to them, the one thing that I wanted to say in terms of the previous conversation and also in terms of this question is, I think what I'm learning is how much we are so alike, even in our differences. And my relation to this work is through my experiences with disease and disorder. So disorder in the sense of that when I was younger, I'm trying to resist the terminology, but I had a panic disorder, right, which never leaves me, and it comes at different space and time. And more recently, over the past 10 years, I have endometriosis, which is like a very painful disease. And so that invisibility in that experiences is what we share in very different ways. But being involved in this conversation teaches me about how similar we are in so many different ways. And I think that that's also something that I'm hoping we would be able to create. So yeah, I think I'm learning a lot more about disability, and I do not even want to get into that conversation myself because I think my two colleagues will do a much better job. But I think it is about starting to have this conversation about what is it that we mean when we say disability. And for me, the importance is also, what is it the languages that we use when we talk about it? Dane always tells me, there was a time where people were supporting the notion of differently abled and disabled, and Dane always speaks about a disabling experience, which is a very different way of thinking about it. And language is important for how we respond to issues.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I'm hoping Dane and Kirsten could elaborate a little bit more in that conceptual question.
Take it away.
Dane, are you happy for me to go?
Yes, go for it, Kirsten.
I think for me, the first thing that comes to mind when you ask what is disabilities, I would say it's something that affects your everyday life. In every moment, it's something that you are aware of. It's something that just makes you experience every part of the world in a way that other people don't. It's something that just affects, your mundane day-to-day moments. So I think for me, I mean, thinking about impairments as well and touching on what Candice said, using an example of my sister who's got lupus, I mean, she's also, you know, she's also affected by her condition every single day and every moment of her life. So she's got this impairment, I've got this disability, and we are so alike, and there are so many things now that, you know, we can talk about and we can relate to. And she was only diagnosed about 5-6 years ago, and I have only experienced life with my disabilities since I was born with it. But it's like Candice said, you start seeing how similar we all are. And if we think about people that struggle with mental health issues, I mean, somebody with depression, that affects them every single day and every single moment. So there's this similarity and the sameness between us. And I think talking about it will honestly just create more humanity and more, you know, I always say like doing God's work. And it's, yeah, I think that that's really what this entire project is about. Over to you, Dane.
Yeah, like I told Candice, you know, that I always use this term in my work, disabling experiences. And I think when I think of disability, I think it is that social experience, you know, but a social experience characterized by oppression, marginalization, discrimination. And it's quite interesting that when you start to read, you know, disability studies and the philosophy and the theory around it, and that's what actually, like I was a part of this stuttering reading group. We were international scholars that came together, and it was quite interesting that this group of speech and language pathologists, when they started reading the work of these disability scholars like Tom Shakespeare and all of them, it's like Candice said, the moment you start to read the wording, you're like, oh my word, that is what I experienced. Oh my God, this is what me. And I think for me is, it's the acknowledgement that there is an unequal oppressive experience amongst you.
Yes.
You know, and not just medicalizing it, and even the term inclusive education. I mean, like if I must go down that rabbit hole, it's also saying once again, there's a norm. And so we must include. It's this thing of let's just include them in us, right? And so I think like Kirsten said, she was born with it. You know, and that's why last year when we wrote that newspaper article, it started, I think it was Down syndrome Barbie. And Dr. Mukanso sent to me, and I was so amazed at how Barbie, for all the years, that was how we saw beauty. You know, the Barbie with the blonde hair and the thing. And yeah, they're using this platform to kind of say, oh my, what is beauty found in this? Right? And I think if we start to, and I'm so happy, like last year when I spoke at the school or 2 years ago, I was telling them, if I had to be a school pupil now, the way young people's minds, oh my God, I am still young, sorry, Caz.
Okay, you want to put yourself in. Let's come for a session of a
Sorry. So we all are young. We all are young.
How open-minded the school pupils are now compared to us. It's worlds apart. Right when I spoke, there was a guy that was with me, right, that started, but he started was quite worse. Cerebral palsy also had, and so that all worked. And there wasn't a smirk, there wasn't a laugh, there was nothing. They were listening to him attentively. And I know I had to go back to my day of, oh my God, there would have been smirks, laughter. You know, because I mean, we were also very limited in our understanding. We didn't do stuff like diversity, or we were just told there's just this linear way of being in life. Right. And so I definitely think it's just that acknowledging that there is an experience and that we should find out more about this experience and how do we change our environment, what we know, and how to actually give voice, give due regard to that experience. Yeah, I think, and I always refer to the LGBTQI plus, right? The way they're going about it. I mean, Woolies last year did this whole campaign about, LGBTQ, and it's right, and that community is vigorously working to make themselves visible everywhere, right? And it's also with them, it's not including, it's about making our experience valid, known, right? They're not interested in being included. They want to be in the space, right? And so I think that is, it's just acknowledging once again that there is an experience, and how do we change what we've known for years to accommodate that experience?
Yes. Yes. No, that is so true. These two topics that we've unpacked, the invisible impairment and also the invisible disability. I think it's important if we can, Dane, maybe just conceptualize this and also just unpack that for our listeners tonight.
Sure. So an invisible impairment, I think it's like something, like Kirsten said, that's not apparent to the eye, right? And the invisible experience, it is embodied. Like when we think about pain, say I don't tell someone I'm in pain, no one's going to know.
Yeah.
And so it's like it is totally within you, but it's also brought about by your environment. It's like also saying that like I remember I always tell people a simple practice. So thankfully to my mommy them, so I love being on the phone, right? But you'll be amazed at how many people who start they fear the phone. They don't pick up their phones. It's hard sometimes to say hello. And I always find that I love them more. I love shopping for clothes, God knows. However, there's also a catch-22 there. When I must go speak to a shop assistant, I triple think that, because once again, although I know I stutter, I still need to find a way to hide my stutter.
Right.
And so it's like this constant thing of I'm using my invisibility to my invisible experience also kind of works for me, because I can still conceal it, like Kirsten said, until a certain point. You can still find myths and lies to tell people, like what I always do when I now stutter, and I'll be like, oh my word, I forgot what I wanted to say. Then when it comes to me, then I say it. You find weird ways around to also still make yourself seem, if I can say, normal, because you also don't want to be seen. But I think it also comes to this thing, and Kirsten and Kaz, you would also know this thing when we think of being colored individuals, this stigma in the colored aanpassings. Aanpassings class.
Aanpassings class.
It's always something negative. They're special. It's like, so we don't want to be special. We also want to be, absolutely.
Yes, no, that is very good. Candice, you wanna have a go there?
Yeah, no, I wanted to just read to you the definition that we had thought that we had used in this article we spoke of, and we're happy to share that with you if you wanted to share that just with other people.
Yes, please.
And so the definition says invisible disabilities are non-visible, or what some call hidden disabilities, that are not immediately noticed unless disclosed to someone.
Yes.
And I think of what Kirsten was sharing now about someone noticing her disability or not noticing, so she can describe and saying, "Oh, no, I hurt myself yesterday," and so kind of this, like not having that conversation for her, and so it's those experiences, and I think what for us, what we're trying to do is expand the notion of how we even think of defining disability. That it is not just about what you see and what you don't see. It's not just about what you have, what you don't have. It's not just about what it's about what you're experiencing within a world
Yes.
and how that
Yes.
world is causing you to experience it.
Yes.
And so I think of what Kirsten had said around how she defined the invisible impairment, invisible disability as something that influences your life every single day. It's who you are.
Yes.
And when I think of how in psychology we define disorder is when you notice a disorder is when something is a pattern of behavior amongst people that
Yes.
you can observe and it affects their lives every single day. So that's the difference between clinical depression and the way we, loosely say, I am depressed today. But clinical depression means that you are unable to do what you need to do
Your
every
life is
single day,
impaired.
right?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes.
So
Yes.
so I think it's about understanding that it's an everyday experience. And my challenge to your listeners right now is to tell us about what they think would be some invisible disabilities or impairments. Because it's we're also trying to be sensitive about not imposing things on people. Dane always speaks about that. And I have this experience too, where yesterday I posted about March is endometriosis month, and a friend of mine responded to my post and said, "Do you suffer with this, friend?" And my immediate guard was up because on the post that explains everything that it's about, and it's a male asking me, "Do you suffer with this?" And so my guard is up, and
Yes.
oh, how do I respond now? And I had to check myself to go, yes, you do. Gosh, you have weeks of pain about it. You better own this space because you can't not own it. And so it's about also speaking back to ourselves around how we classify ourselves and reclassify ourselves all the time in different spaces. And yeah, I mean, it might not, maybe this definition of invisible disabilities or invisible impairments don't feel well or sit well with people. So we would love to just hear and build and grow what this could be. Because I think in itself, just disabilities and impairment in itself can sometimes be quite a contentious issue to talk about.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think that is great advice for our listeners also to go to our website at oppiebol.org.za and also put their comments in there and also share their experiences with us so we can have interactive sessions here. I think one of the topics that we will definitely unpack will be that of disclosure. Specifically in the workplace, persons with disabilities sometimes feel that they must disclose just for statistical purposes of the organization, but there are many other different reasons for that. I think that should be definitely form part of our next conversation. Kirsten, will you just also, we've come almost to the final seconds in the closing stages of our conversation. Just tell us, REIID, where do we go from here?
Well, that's a loaded question, Candice. You had to come to me for that one. You couldn't have gone to my elders. Dane already confessed that he's older. You couldn't have gone to my elders. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot. I mean, from my side, what I'm really hoping to do is, have workshops, have seminars, have interactive things that people can learn about, invisible disabilities and impairments and how to, interact with people who have them, and how people with these disabilities can also feel more comfortable and confident in themselves when they want to talk about it or when people ask them. And I think another major, well, there's obviously a lot of important aspects that go into this research, but also, looking at relationships, whether it's romantic friendships, family relationships. I mean, diving into the whole idea of what romantic relationships are like for people with disabilities, that conversation can go on for hours. That's just a whole other world. So
Topic.
I think there's just all these things, right, that we wanna tackle. And I think what we really want to do is have these interactive approaches, but also have research papers, research methods that we can do in order to get an understanding of other people's experiences, and then create an output that is accessible, not just for academics or researchers, but for, a person who, say, for example, is a project manager or somebody who works in the shop. It doesn't have to be, in this super fancy academic language, but we can make it more accessible, right? And we also want the people with these disabilities to be able to get their hands on the research and also, understand it and see that their disabilities have a purpose. And I think a big part for me is interacting with individuals and showing them how they can also tell their story in so many different ways. And so they don't have to feel that their disability is for nothing, but they can see that their lived experiences that is so unique and so different and so beautiful, how wonderful that actually looks when it is expressed out loud and not hidden in the dark. So yeah, there's a lot that we are planning to do, and we will do. Thank you, Caz.
Thank you. Candice, any closing remarks from your side?
Yes, just a big thank you to you and to everyone listening, and to say, yeah, we have big plans. We don't always know what those plans are going to actually look like, but the plans are there. And we are really in a very open way, transparent way, asking people to go to your website and to really jot down some things that their reflections in relation to this conversation, because we want to make sure that we are also in our research, in our seminars, in our different engagements, targeting important things. Often we might think things are important because we live in our experiences, and so the things that we find important, we would want to prioritize, but we want to also hear from other people. I think for me, the key also is to work with young people. I think a lot of stigma, a lot of othering, a lot of all of those things happen, particularly in schools where most people spend most of their time. And so when there is someone that, as Dane says, doesn't meet the norm, sorry, that was in quotation marks for people listening, it becomes, a space where people become really stigmatized, other oppressed. And that then means their mental health diminishes and the way that they feel about themselves diminishes. And I think it's important for us, and we're really thinking of how do we get to the schools? How do we go and talk to the schools about this? Because children also take messages home, which means that we then get to the family without necessarily having the family come to a meeting. So it's trying to think innovatively about how do we do this in a very, very meaningful way. So yeah, thanks for having us today. It was really, really great.
Thank you, Candice. Dane, please take it home for us.
I think that, it's interesting that we are celebrating 50 years of democracy this year as a country. And I think that the week after next week is Human Rights Day. And many other holidays, Freedom Day follows. And I think that if we can restore the human rights and the freedom of people with disabilities, I think then we have actually succeeded in our goal, but also stay true to those who laid their lives down, for the freedom and the human rights for this country. And so, like Candice said, we can go back to that Ubuntu, coming together to promote the human rights and freedom of persons with disabilities. I think then we have succeeded. Thanks, Caz.
Yes, absolutely. Well, from my side, I just want to say thank you for this empowering session that we had, and also, for all our listeners and our audiences. I think the message is clear. So thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to our next conversation that we will be having here together. And I just want to also encourage you to continue with this hard work and beautiful work that you guys are busy with out there. And I believe in unity there are strength, in unity and collaborations and networks and partnerships. So taking hands gives us that strength to drive our collective objectives. So thank you so much, guys, for that. So as we come to the end of today's Disability Awareness podcast, let us remember that inclusivity is not just about accommodating differences. It's about celebrating diversity and embracing the unique strengths of each individual that he or she might bring to the table in order to make a change. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Join us again for our next podcast session on the 5th of April, 2024. Cheers, guys.
Bye.
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 So